Sorry, we're running a bit late at the moment. We've got a couple of technical difficulties which we're sorting out, but we're going to get back and start off with Dapz. So I'm going to bring in the room and bring him in
Yo.
there. Hold on a second. Let's just get you both in here. Hello. We've got that view.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Good. Okay, let's go with the chat here. Okay, so what's happened is I'm not able to hear sound from my laptop with all the feedback that I've done. So we're going to start with Dapz, and I just want you guys to let me know if you can hear him okay when we get cracking. So whilst we sort my stuff out, Dapz, do you want to put your screen up and just see if everyone can start? I'm just letting you know, guys, we're starting super late today because I've had some problems with my laptop. We don't know why, but I can't get my Ableton to be heard through the speakers, which is really annoying. But Dapz can be heard, which is great. So he's going to start with his portion of the feedback, which is doing some stuff. Kerry, as you're the first one in here, can you do me a favor? I'm going to put and Barry, I'm going to put Dapz's computer screen on, and I just want you guys to tell me if you can hear this, okay? So just let me know if you can hear the track he's playing just for a second. Just play it for like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Preferably something with beats in it.
Sorry.
There you go.
Sorry.
Guys, can you just tell us you can hear that, okay? Yeah, okay, great, wonderful. Okay, Dapz, I'm going to take your stuff out.
Okay.
I don't know what happened there.
Right, sorry.
Dapz is going to set up his all the tracks in order so that we can go through them. What a horrible way to start. Sorry about this, everyone, but it happens, I guess. We've got a bunch of tracks here that everyone sent in. Now we can only get to so many. We had so many tracks being sent in. And obviously we're going to do, I think, 9 tracks today. We may finish a little early and see if I can fix the problem and then come back. I don't know. We'll work that out, but no problems.
We'll see how it goes. We'll see how
it goes. So what Dapz was going to do is there are 9 tracks in his DAW. And what we'll do is go through the mix and the mastering part of them. There won't be any reviews on the track or this stuff. I've written it all down so I can give you written advice if we don't get to that, but we'll do mine afterwards, I think.
Yeah.
And we'll start with the mix and the mastering side of things here. And then we'll try and figure out my stuff afterwards. So let's start again. Welcome to Open the Door, part 3. And today we're going to do feedback in your tracks. I'm going to start with Dapz, who's going to show us some of the tracks that you've sent. We've got 9 tracks to go through, and then I'll crack on with my bit afterwards. Big shout to everybody in the room. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for your patience, and really sorry we had a late start. So Dapz, I'm going to bring your screen in, honey.
Yeah, no worries.
And if you want to tell us whose track you're going to start with, and then we can have a chat about it, and I can look at the written feedback that I gave for that track as well.
Yeah. So, as Rap said, we've got 9 tracks from all you lovely beat makers out there, and we'll start off with, is it Anthony Sakati? Did I pronounce that correct?
Yeah, sure. Actually, do you want to start off with is that your first one on the list?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've just kind of gone down as in how they came in. Do you know what I mean? You know how you sent them. So, so yeah, what we'll do then is we'll play the track, we'll have a listen to it, and as we're listening to it, then I'll give you my thoughts throughout or whatever. Let's just play.
Why don't we start with playing? Let's play 2 minutes of the track.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you want to get through to the whole thing because but
no.
Play 2 to 3 minutes of each track. All right, let's start with this one.
We'll just play until we feel it's enough or we need to talk. Okay. Apologies.
You want to jump to the meat and potatoes of it?
Yeah, it was just on a loop there. Okay, so basically, this is my thought. I mean, Rap, did you want to go over the notes or the thoughts that you had when you initially listened to it?
Okay, I'll go first if you want me to. Now, what I've done, which you can't see, which is why I'm not sure I should go first actually, is I added parts to this, I changed things. For me, this track, I think Anthony started his own new genre, which is like ambient drum and bass, which is great. I mean, start something new by all means, do you know what I mean? But in the structure of drum and bass, and everything here is said with love, kindness, respect, but we want to help you, right? So that's the goal here. So I hope that you understand we're only going to give you constructive criticism. It's never going to be bad. But if this is a new genre you're doing, then that's great. But within the confines of drum and bass, there is a structure and an arrangement that works, right? And we really mustn't change that around too much because people expect drops to happen at certain times. People expect things to happen. DJs have to mix into tracks simply. I would start off by inviting Anthony to make the beat simple. And maybe what we'll do for next week is we'll go through all the changes that I made on the tracks if we don't fix the issue this week.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
here are my notes, right? The intro's too complicated. The drum beats need to be simple pattern. You could even start just with using a drum pattern like that, filtering it down if you want to do something like that. But the rhythm, the timing is really off. It's going to be really hard for DJs to mix on that. We need some risers, anticipation. We want to break the monotony of any track by adding glitter to it, adding like sound effects, adding, some sort of anticipation. And typically every 8 bars, something will happen. Like you'll get a riser happening, or now you don't have to use typical risers. It could be a filter, it could be anything else, some sort of transitional tools that will let people know things are happening. I think you have to keep the track interesting and keep it moving. For me, the track sounded like there were 2 tracks happening at the same time. You've got this one sort of very tribal, which I thought was pretty cool, build up and drums, and I like that. And I would almost use those drums as a build up because they were very tribally and cool. But then it goes into this sort of flute part. And they don't marry. And one of the ways to do this is to start a track and start working on the bass part or the drums and locking it in for 8 bars, right? And seeing how you feel and adding elements to that, because once you've got the meat and potatoes done, you've got a bass line you really like, you've got drums that you really like, you've worked on them, they sound really, really good. Then one of the things you can do is start to add elements into that and then thread that and decide to make an intro. Or you can work the way I often work, which is I start with the intro and do the bass hard, which is really difficult actually because I'm more melody driven. So that's the way I work. There's no rules. But that could be something to do. Start to add some of those elements that go in to that flute section so that it's not so juxtaposed. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Secondly, the flute is overpowering everything else in the mix. So you should be using side chaining tools or ways to make that work and not just lie flat on the top like it's just on the top going there. So I would say the arrangement needs some help, and this is a really easy fix, Anthony. Arrangement is, and look, if you're brand new at this is what we're here for, to help you and get you going. We don't have a lot of time, so we want to make sure we cram this in. Arrangement. I can tell you're not listening to other people's tracks, and how I know this is because if you put other people's tracks in your door, and this is invaluable advice that I'm giving you right now, and you can put locators in Ableton or any door you're using, and you can look at the arrangement and you'll know, oh, the drop happens at bar 33 or 49 or 65, or oh, the breakdown's at 97. Okay, play some of your favorite tracks again, unless this is a new genre you're making, because it could be a genre I'm unaware of. look at the arrangement. Let's see how that's in there. And then you can sort of copy the arrangement. You can get rid of the track and keep the locators there. And it'll be a good guide for you so that you're always got the arrangement right, because this is really important. And in the intro, you know, you could start off with a hat. You can start off with, if you want to start off with a beat, I will show you what I did to your track. If I don't do it today, it will be next week when we fix this issue. And I can show you the fixes I did, because I actually went deep into this track and I did a lot of things that I think will help you without changing your track, just simple things that you can fix. So Dapz, what do you think mix wise about what he could be doing? Because I think he's probably fairly new and I'm
Yeah.
not sure if he's in the room actually.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully he gets to see this back or he's in the room. But as you were saying, I mean, from a technical point of view, or how will this translate across a big system or whatever? First of all, I just wanted to point out, if you can see the waveform here, the left side is greater than the right side, so something strange is happening. I'll play the track just for a few seconds so I can start pointing stuff out on the meters, so you get more of a visual indication of what we're trying to talk about. So looking at this scope here, you can see that the track's leaning over. There's a lot of stereo bass. Well, the track in general is very, very stereo. So one thing I noticed when I was playing the track just then, it was kind of like psychedelic. It felt 3D. Is this a good thing? I don't know. So let's play the track in mono. It just sounds like phase. Did you hear how it kind of felt phase, like there was some sort of issue with the sound? Play it in sides. So it's the same thing again. So I guarantee if we play this track in left, it will sound fine. Stereo. Did you feel how it kind of really pulled apart when I went back to stereo? So I'm thinking, you've put a stereo imager or a stereoizer across the whole entire track and you've widened it, which is now left a major issue in the mono. So going back to episode 2 last week, we were talking about mono compatibility. This is a great example of why you shouldn't just put stereo images or wideners on the master bus, because this is the problem. If this tune was played in a club, it would pretty much sound like this. And it just sounds hollow and scooped out. Just moving on quickly, because I know we've spent a lot of time on this one already. As Rap said, this flute here, it's just really loud, like to the point where all the bass is gone. Look, it's just green, and the green's representing that frequency, you know, that frequency band. The drums are gone, they're buried, everything's buried because this pan pipe or this flute is so loud. So it's just a case that, that's cool. It's just a case that you will need to just turn that down, like turn it right down, because it's just too much going on. What I did like about this tune was this. I thought
that's actually the part I focused on, and I made a feature of that in this track. I wish I could show you.
Well, you can.
We'll do it next week.
Do it next week, because honestly, like if you put a kick snare in there and it's like bam, 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 and you had a kick snare like bam, 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 you know what I mean? It would really translate really nice on that point.
And that's exactly what I did.
Okay.
That's exactly. I mean, you saw how much work I put into these tracks.
I know. I was blown away, to be fair.
I want to help. And
I was blown away. Okay, well, do you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, but one thing I wanted to say, when you're starting out with tracks, don't worry about all this stereo and widening and things like that. Don't forget, you can outsource your tracks for mixing. So what you want to get good at is writing the tunes, focusing on them. I can't stress enough how important it is to put your favorite 5 tracks in your door and listen to them. What makes them good, apart from the fact that the people have talent and they're writing them? Take a listen to their sounds, go through and, you know, analyze each sort of every 4 bars and listen, like, okay, the first 4 bars, wow, this person has put a riser in there, they've put a hat in there, there's some effects in there. Okay, move the locator bars along. What's in the next 8 bars? You've got to get used to doing intrinsic scapular inspections of people's music. I can't tell you how much time I spend studying other people's music, because, you know, my head's either in a YouTube video or a track in my door, or I'm just studying how to make a kick out of something or whatever. It never ever ends. And the more time and effort you put into that, and it's amazing to me how many people forget that it would really help them if they just pop a track in their door and then listen to the difference and use analyzers and spectrums to see what's going on and what the difference is. I think that's really great start. Anthony, I will get back to you with all the fixes and how to help you on your track, because actually, and here's the good thing about this track, there's a lot of work to be done on it, but it's unique. And I like that about your track. I like that it's got something a bit unique there, and it's got
Different.
something
It's
that's
like
different. Hold on, it's different. So if it's different, that's going to grab people's attention. Now we just have to get it into a form that makes it DJ friendly and makes it acceptable to the listener, in the sense that they can swallow that, you know, because like if it's too different and too off the wall, it might be a little bit difficult for you. And the reason I want to spend time on Anthony's track, everyone, is because he needs the help. So we need to be able to give it to him and make sure that he gets a good understanding, because I want you to keep trying. You know, all of these people here today, they're all at different levels of where they're at. Some of them are really advanced, some people are new. So, you know, what I don't want anyone to do is to feel dejected and not want to give it a go, because all of us started somewhere. And if I played you some of my first tracks, you probably want to hurl. All right, let's move on to the next track, which I think is D Manic Enlightened, if I get that right.
I can move on to that one. So we're okay. So
well, tell me where you're at, and I'll go with...
the one I've got next is Click Promises Unmastered.
All righty. Yes, you're right. Sorry, my bad.
That's all right. No. You're just having one of those days today. That's all.
Need a drink.
Okay, right. So, like you said, we're going to go through these tunes. So the next one is Click Promises. Let's check it out. Maybe not. Going to bring this tune up a bit because it doesn't look very loud, to be fair. The intro is lovely on this, like such a beautiful intro.
And if you guys need us to turn anything up, do let us know.
Yeah. As I say, some of these tracks are not mastered and you can see the waves, like that one's going to be a beast. Yeah, there's quite a few messages coming in on this one. Okay.
Cool. I think that's a good
Yeah.
point to play until the breakdown and then
Yeah.
drop.
Just to see what's happening and if there's anything different there going on.
Okay, so
So
I'll give you my verbal notes before we get into mix and stuff like that. This is by Click. It's a track called Promises. It's got a beautiful vibe, and again, this would be great for someone like Bookham or a label like that, which does liquid. I mean, LSB would probably eat that up. He's
yeah.
my favorite liquid producer. And just one quick note about the other thing. Someone did a message in the box, which I thought was a really good point. If you look at Aphex Twin, that is exactly the vibe that is sort of like does its own thing. So that's a really good point, whoever mentioned that, because that to me is sort of in the pocket of where that other track was. Okay, so moving on. So Click, Promises. I've put beautiful intro, perfect choice of sounds, which is really
Yeah.
important. Each sound does its thing and has a reason for being there, and that's really good. Nice hat to keep time for me. A nice hat to keep time for me. This is all about the mix as everything else is there. Make sure to use some glitter effects to enhance those transitions. So what I'm talking about, to bring up your reverse crashes, add reverbs, and make sure to EQ the reverbs as well. EQ all your effects, and you can add some percussion to keep it moving, and maybe like a little small break or a shake up. I think is there. It could just be all hidden in the mix. So basically, for me, that track rolling along, but adding a percussion element to it, possibly after 8-16 bars, could have just taken it up a notch, and then you change it. Like often, we'll change the speed of hats or something like that. You'll start with an hat that's going like just normal to, triple time, and then it goes to double time, then it goes to like or then shaker it up. So just changing the speeds of hats can change it. But for me, a little bit of percussion could be really cool. But that's honestly a stylistic choice. One of the things I felt was that the use of glitter effects is really important. If you've got a beautiful, beautiful crash, right? Just a crash, or even just a plain crash, rather, you can make it truly beautiful just with the choice of reverbs you use. And I love Valhalla. I use Valhalla all the time. That's my go-to for reverbs. But honestly, you can use anything and it will be good if you know how to use it. And knowing how to EQ those reverbs as well, and taking the bottom off them and shaving the muddiness out of them and keep them high, and making the mixes really long and the delay amount really long, will give you this beautiful high shimmer, not too high, but a really nice shimmer, which will really emphasize those effects. And something Exile actually taught me when I was working with him was just the use of reverbs on effects, and EQing the reverbs, and how important that is to do. So that was pretty much my notes on that. Altogether, I think that's a beautiful track, and if it was
Yeah.
mixed and mastered to its fullest capability, I think this is something that would get signed up in a minute by one of those labels.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hold on one
While you,
second. Sorry,
okay.
just a
Yeah. Sorry.
question
Sorry.
here. Barry is asking, is that putting an EQ on the channel after the reverb? Okay, so let's talk about this for a second, because this is a good point here.
Yeah.
If you imagine I'm sitting here talking like this, and then I do this, you can't hear me as much clearly, my present voice, right? As if I take my hands away. Okay, this is where sends come in, because when you have a send, it's putting the reverb up there, but it's not covering the main vocal. It's the same thing as if you had a vocal on one channel, and then you doubled the vocal over and you put reverb on the second vocal. You still got the main vocal on the other channel, and you'd pull the reverb channel down parallel, like parallel compression or parallel affecting, or whatever you want to call it, right? So it's important to decide, does this sound need a send, or does it need the reverb covering all of it? So if it needs the reverb covering all of it, put it on the actual channel. If it's a vocal, then use a send. Hopefully that answers your question with that. And if you want to add anything to that, Dapz, feel free.
Yeah. I mean, what I've been doing in the background while you're talking is I'm just sort of putting together a little something where I feel if we was to just add a hat, like you were saying, like like a tiss hat or something, or a snare clap, whatever. I feel like that's what the track needed. It just needed a bit more energy. Do you know what I mean? It
Hold
just
on a
needed
minute, don't steal my thunder. I did this already on his track.
yeah. This is yeah. No, that's cool. That's cool. You can. I know you went in. I was very impressed. I was very
No, I'm
impressed. I
just
was like,
kidding. But one of the
I
things
was like,
here,
what?
one of the things is here is like, how you start off with, for this track, for me, it would be nice if it just was like a tss, tss, and then you can go a little bit half time, you know. So show us what you were going to do. I was only pulling.
Well, I've kind of done this blind here, like, you know. So the track itself, yeah, sorry, I'm just making sure it's right. Let's just take that off a minute. So there's the track there, and I was thinking maybe get like some hi-hats, you know, just to like try and add that energy there, and then possibly a clap or something to help that snare come through. So just bear with me, because as I say, I just selected these sounds.
Often if you layer the snare with a clap, it will really bring it out. And one of the things you want to make sure you do is just nudge one of the track. Well, it's hard to do this without showing somebody, but nudge the transient out of the way a little bit, so that the two snares aren't hitting exactly the same. It can give a really nice it will really help that snare pop out as well. I mean, I was working on a track today, and I'm telling you, I spent 4 hours just on drums, getting them to sound amazing. Because when the drums sound great, then everything falls into place, and then
everything falls into place.
Then you put your bass line in, you've got your track spacer doing the I love that, by the way. Oh my God. Why can't every plugin be like track spacer? So easy to use, easy to install. It works like a dream, and it makes compression like idiot proof. You know, it's compression for idiots. You can't get it wrong. I love it.
No, is it? So just quickly, I will play what I've just added to this. So if I go to before, so that's what it was before, and then maybe the snare was the wrong choice. Yeah.
No.
I think you get the idea.
I think it brought its energy up. And like I said, it can be a mixed thing, but to me, these are the elements. Like, often you have to layer snares, and you know, sometimes I can do 2 or 3 or 4 layers before I've got the snare I want. Typically 2, but sometimes 3. You know, and to
but
get
as I say,
sound, you know. So, but the thing is, to me, adding percussion, which is what I put in the notes, adding percussive elements would have kept this energy moving. That's the only thing I think this was lacking, was a little bit of glitter, the right percussive elements, like, you know, like I put hats, you know, things like that, and a shaker, and maybe the right clap on top of that snare. I mean, this is a beautiful track. Good job.
It's a lovely tune.
What about the mix side of things here?
As I say, I think overall the balance of the tune's great. It's not mastered, so you can't sort of take that in consideration of the actual tonal balance is perfect, because there's certain things which, if he was to send this to me for mastering, there would be 1 or 2 things I would suggest doing in the mix to get it to sound great in the master. So for example, that bass line, that bass is far too loud. Especially for a track of this nature, that should be more ear candy rather than it being aggressive, because the track's really nice, soulful and light. Then that bass comes in, and it's just a bit too much. So it'd be nice if that was sort of tucked back a bit, but that's what gives you that bit of anger in the tune, but it's also still nice and a roller, if you know what I mean. With the added snare and the hi-hat, I feel like it kind of counterbalances the level of that bass line. But yeah, for me, that's where I'd be going with this. Trying to add some percussion, add some hi-hats to keep the rhythm changing and the speed of the tune changing, and just sort of like, again, with that bass line, come down with that bass. It's just too aggressive for this happy tune, should we say.
And I think what he's talking about, not the speed changing, he means the energy.
The energy.
What about the intro of the track, that the volume was so quiet? Is that something you would address? Do you turn that volume up, or would you leave it like that? I just think
it's just because it's an unmastered tune. You can see how spiky it is. There's a lot of transients. So if this was mastered, you could go to the intro and talking about what we did in the other weeks about doing some sort of automation in the intro to the drop, so that, you know, the drop sounds nicer. Because as you say, you go to the intro and it's really like Pesce sort of Buckham style.
Just beautiful.
The hats are nice here. But then by the time it gets to there, the level comes right up. Do you know what I mean?
I just want to give a shout out to Moisen, who was doing his best to help us sort out the studio issues earlier.
Yep.
Big love to you, mate.
Yeah. Hold tight,
really
Moisen.
Nice to talk to you again as well. I look forward to giving you more of my computer problems in the future. Okay.
Should we move on?
Yep. Okay. So the next track we have, I think this is D Manic, correct?
1 second. So yes, D Manic, that's correct.
Why don't we play it to the breakdown,
Yeah,
and
sure.
till it drops back in after the breakdown, and then unless we
Yep.
feel it should be shorter. Okay.
Yep. Let's go. D Manic. I'm going to need to put a limiter on this as well, just to bring the level up. Get on it, Robert. Get back on the beats. I was just getting into it then.
Do you remember the last time you felt rejected? Was it a guy that never returned a phone call? Or a father that never came around? Was it a boss who overlooked you for a promotion? Or maybe it was someone in your life who never thought you were good enough, no matter what you did to try to impress them. We all know rejection hurts. It stings. It makes us feel like we're not good enough. It causes us to question ourselves and doubt our future. I submit to you that rejection isn't something we should be afraid of. And it sure isn't something that should make us get discouraged, depressed, or work unhealthy amounts of hours just to prove to the world that we are somebody worth loving and paying attention to. Rather, rejection is our friend and not our enemy.
Strong message. Do you want to come in, Rap?
Yeah, okay. By the way, Dapz, I'm sending you private messages, but you're not checking them.
Oh, sorry. Apologies.
That's all right. No, it's just so I can tell you when we're listening to tracks when we're not. Okay, firstly, I absolutely love this track. I think it's beautiful. And I love that it's got a story, a message, and all of that. It's got beautiful intros, easy to mix. Again, make sure to make good use of your reverbs. Adding effects enhances those transitions. Love the string change, gated vox. Now, for me, what I would have changed is the arrangement. Exactly what Dapz said. I would have saved the second breakdown. For me, that's where it should have kicked off. And in the mix you sent me, I've actually done some audio jitsu and I've changed your track around. So you're going to have to wait for either later on or next week for me to show you what I did. But that's all I could say. What I think is that you've put the main, you've done a breakdown, then you stopped, then you started, and that is a no-no. So basically, you've got an amazing breakdown. I chopped the audio to the right breakdown that I thought it should go to, and then I put it where it should kick back in, and it just took off and it changed the track in the right way. Again, it's your personal choice, but as a DJ, I wouldn't play that because it just as it kicks off, it stopped again, and you don't want people to get going and then stop on the dance floor. You've got to let them breathe. It's a journey, valleys and peaks. I love the track, and it's got, again, it's a beautiful track. Simple, easy fixes for me. It's the arrangement. So that's really all I had to say about that one that was wrong, because really I would much rather have just shown you how it sounds with a different arrangement. But there you go. It's all good. The arrangement that I changed verbally is where he starts talking. I made that the main drop and then basically let it kick off into the other bit. So, I'll show you next week. No worries.
Yeah. But I think you're absolutely right, Rap. When the vocal comes in, that should be the first breakdown. Absolutely. And then it kicks into the tune because, as I said, once it got to that point, it felt like, oh, we're stopping again. And as you say, that's where the energy goes. So, translation on this track. The top end is really, really bright on this tune, so it'll be something where you'd have to reduce the top end. I will show you quickly. In fact, no, I won't use that EQ. I will use, when I can get rid of it, this one, because the beauty of this EQ is that I can keep the transients from the high end but reduce the actual tone of it. So play the track again. No word of a lie, that's where you need to be. Like, I've literally lowered that nearly 7 dBs. That's how bright the tune is. So before and after. And what it also does is it takes that spittiness from the top end, it opens up the low end, so the track is perceived to be warmer and fatter, even though I've not touched the low end. You're just getting that as a perception. For me, I would say turn the hi-hats down. The clap or the snare, that needs to have more transient. You need to add more of a transient shaper to it. We'll try and find it. Hang on. So it's like around here, about 1K. I would get a transient shaper, really, I don't know, or layer some sort of snare in the same area, like around 1K or half that, and just get the transient snap from it. So it's got the from the actual snare, and don't rely on the clap to do it because it's just not enough energy to create a groove, if you know what I mean. So I'm not really feeling this nub in the kick. Can you hear that? So I would EQ that out. It's at 200 hertz, 217 hertz. Remove that. Keep the transient. So we'll bypass everything. So you see how spitty and bright that was, even though we just sat there listened to pretty much the whole tune, and our ears didn't tell us that. But I mean, I heard it, but I was just kind of like waiting for the moment. Do you know what I mean?
It's incredible the difference when you A/B it like that. It makes such a huge difference.
And all I've done is reduced frequencies. I'm not boosting, I'm not pushing anything, because the mix is there, but it's just a case that the hi-hats are just too loud. There's a nub, like there's that weird resonant frequency in the kick that needed to come down. Once you've got these things into place, literally level is your EQ. I know that sounds a bit weird, but literally don't go for an EQ, don't start going for compressors. You know, this is when you're making the tune. Just get the levels right. Once you've got the levels right, it'll indicate, is it too bright, is it too dull? Because I don't think you've put a limiter on your tune, as in on the master output, to get you to that overall volume. Now that I'm at this overall volume, it's telling me the problems in the tune. So what I would do is start putting like a gain utility on your master output, put it as +6, then put a limiter on afterwards. You don't need to push the limiter because the gain plugin's doing the job. And then you'll get a better indication of what the problem is in the tune. But other than that, absolutely fantastic. Brilliant.
Got a couple of questions I'm just going to answer real quick. Someone was asking about Cygnus in the chat. Sorry, there's a lot of messages. But yeah, Cygnus is my distribution. To me, they are absolutely the best. I have never been so happy with a relationship in my life like I am with my distributor. Which is a weird thing to say, because I was with another distributor before for 22 years and they were absolutely awful. These guys, they really care. They have a personal relationship. They treat every client the same. And honestly, they're just brilliant. So yeah, if you're thinking of switching distribution companies, I mean, I can only tell you from my experience, I'll only endorse people I work with, but Cygnus are fantastic. And if you've got questions that aren't related to these tracks, if you could save them to the end of the stream, we really would appreciate that, so that the people who've sent tracks in can get their turn. Now, if you want to send us tracks for feedback, we'll try to get to all of them. We only accept tracks from people who have signed up on Open the Door. I've pinned a message at the top of the chat with some handy links for you. So we will look through. So don't drop them in the chat box here or do that, because we won't get to them. So there's a specific email, and you have to be signed up, and then you'll get the email, and that's how you'll know. So alrighty then, moving on to the next one. I think we've got... Now, I've got to tell you a happy story. You're going to love this. Well, actually, no, that's the next one. Okay. I'll save it. Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, save it. One last thing as well.
It's about the track. You guys aren't going to believe this, because magic things happen, and I'm actually signing one of the tracks that was submitted. So I'm excited. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Lovely. Just
quickly, just going back to the last tune that we just did. In the intro, you've got this sub. You know, this sub here. So there's one thing I wanted to mention. It was what I thought when I was listening to the tune. The sub in the intro is great, it's fine, but when it comes to the drop, you kind of like lose that whole perception. I would lower the sub just in the intro, so that when it does drop, it's bigger. The track feels bigger, because at the moment that sub, just sitting with a hi-hat, it might be a bit too overwhelming, too powerful. Just a real small sort of difference there. Lowering the sub, making it warm rather than boomy for the intro.
Yeah, you never want to take away from the drop. All right, let's move on to Dandelion, Dark Matter. Is that the track you've got up next?
Yeah, Dandelion, Dark Matter. Let's go. Some dark business. some
Okay.
darkness.
I am sending you messages, man. Would you pay attention to them? Direct messages, not on your phone.
No. I'm trying to look at these small messages, but because
This
I've
typical
obviously
guy
got the
can't
small thing open.
multitask. Look, I
I
tell you
can't
what I
even
think
get to that bit. I can't even text back in it.
Right, okay. So, firstly, I think you have a career in film music because this is the kind of stuff a lot of the time that is really great for filmic music, score, and I've worked with a lot of movies. If you go to my IMDb page, you'll see that I've done a lot of film, and it's really interesting because a lot of people start off in drum and bass and end up like gosh, what's his name? Photech and people like that, who are amazing drum and bass producers and end up working for like massive film companies doing film and stuff like that. So I feel personally that Dandelion probably has a future in film. But having said that, I also feel that again he's in that Aphex Twin, very different sort of left field, and so this is probably not your typical drum and bass artist. He probably listens to different stuff. So we've got to be open-minded about all the drum and bass that we hear, right? Because look at metalheads, but even with metalheads, even if you're going dark, and this is what I want to say, you have to find the beauty in a track somewhere. It can't just be dark, 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 dark. There has to be, like, I liked in that intro that there was this haunting operatic vocal, and I think you could have made that a feature or something like that. There has to be some beauty to rub against the dark, otherwise it just becomes a very down vibe. And you've got to think about how is that going to affect people in a club. This sounds silly, but it's something everybody as a producer needs to think about. People in clubs are going through stuff. They've either had a crap day at work, they're either on drugs or they're not, or they're lonely, or they're going through a breakup, or they're going through something. Your music affects how people feel. So if you want people to feel good about how they're feeling and paying you money to go to a club to see you perform or do that, you have to think about how you're impacting music. The reason music exists is to help people get inspired, to lift them to a higher vibration, or to make them feel something, to make them feel emotional. I love dark music. I absolutely love it. When I'm feeling bad, I put on the darkest Nine Inch Nails track I can find, and that makes me feel better. I only like it when it rains too. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with dark, but you have to find the beauty in it. For me, that's what's missing in this track. It's impossible to mix, so that's not always a bad thing because it forces people to start your track at the beginning like I did with Spiritual Aura, but there still needs to be some sort of rhythmic element in there so people can mix it, because if it's not a hit song off the bat straight away, like a commercial radio track or something, having an intro like that, are people going to wait on the dance floor for that long before it kicks in? Or is this a track you're just making to listen to a video game? You've got to think about the placement of where the track is made. That's something I think is really important. Are you making music for the dance floor, for Spotify, for radio, for gaming, for film? And I think that would be important to let us know next time we review your tracks. And whilst I'm on that note, when you are sending a track, the professional way to send a track, by the way, people, is to put your artist name in the track, the BPM, and sometimes the key. I know I do that. And what genre it is, what it's made for. That would help as well. So in the notes, when you send me stuff. I've had a couple of people send me tracks that just says demo, and I'm like, who's it from? I've had to go back through email. So it's important to think about the placement of the track. What's it for, so that we can help advise you even better. Because if you turn around and said this is actually for film score, I could give you more advice based on that. I think the mix is I mean, I'll let Dapz deal with the mix, but obviously there's a lot of reverb and effects all over it. It's making it very washy. You've got to think about how this will sound in a big sound system. The washiness for me goes on for a bit too long. If you're going to go that dark, you need to add some beauty, a vocal sample to rub against it. Unless you're going for a film score, this track needs more variation to keep it interesting. Again, without knowing what it was intended for, if it was film, I can't give you advice. But if it was just for drum and bass and to play, then I would say that it needs arrangement work. Mix needs some work, and I think you need to find elements that keep it interesting. So I hope that is okay and that makes sense. Over to you, Dapz.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not hating on this tune. This is right up my street, to be fair. For the drum and bass, the dark side. I know a lot of labels that would take this tune if it's available for signing, but there's a few things going on in this tune. As Raps pointed out, the intro not very DJ friendly. Maybe something to think about. Do a dub mix. I don't know. Send something to the label with an intro, DJ friendly intro, and one as it is. The other thing is it's a bit loud. Like this track, I master a hell of a lot of this style of drum and bass, and believe me, these people want it is just low as possible because they're more about the dynamics and the bass of the tune. They want it to translate differently to how most want a jump up tune or a roller tune or a jungle tune, for example. So for me, if we just play the tune quickly, because there's like an open hi-hat, which is like a splash open hi-hat. That's the beauty there. See this open hi-hat here? It's just far too loud. It's just, you can see, look, it's going right up into the super high frequencies there. So it'll just be a case of lowering that break, because the break is super bright, or make an adjustment using a de-esser or something. But yeah, as I say, the track is it's cool, it's nice and breaks. It's like a mid-90s sort of faux tech, as Rat was saying. It's Renegade hardware, hard leaders, you know, metalheads all day long. But I think what Rat was also getting at is, if this is a drum and bass tune, or if it's for film score or something, because you could use this for adverts, you could use it for film, you can use it for all sorts. So it'll just be good to know what the intentions was, but I do know there's quite a few labels that would snap this up very, very easily.
Definitely, but I think you also have to have formula and structure, and
exactly.
And, you know, you can have dark music, and like Dapz says, lots of people will snap that up, but it still has to have formula, be something that is playable for DJs. So if this was film and for film score, that wouldn't matter at all, because you'd be cutting to film. All right, so
yeah, cool.
Let's move on to the next one. DJ, to keep on the dark theme, Undertaker. This track's called Teardrops.
This is going to need a limiter.
What you're going to hear about today is nothing short of a miracle.
3 a.m. bird at the phone. All my friends are for the show. I'm laying down again in my room. My head, there's only you. And I don't want to cry no more. I don't want to take a soul. While I'm staring at the wall. There's no sound, just teardrops. Just teardrops. Just teardrops. There's no sound, just teardrops. Just teardrops. Just teardrops. There's no sound, just teardrops. Just teardrops. Just teardrops. There's no sound, just teardrops. Just teardrops. Just teardrops. There's no sound, just teardrops. No sound, just
What you're going to hear about today is nothing short of a miracle.
3 a.m. bird at the phone. All my friends are for the show. I'm laying down again in my room. In my head, there's only you. And I don't want to cry no more. I don't want to taste your soul. While I'm staring at the wall. There's no sound, just teardrops. Just teardrops. Just teardrops. There's no sound, just teardrops. Just teardrops. Just teardrops.
All that.
No sound, just teardrops.
Lovely.
Lovely jubbly. Now
Lovely
I'm
jubbly.
going to tell you a happy story, because this is when sometimes things go really well. I want to sign that track. I think that track's amazing. It needs some work.
Boom.
Boom. But
Boom.
the moment I got that, I emailed him back and I was like, tell me about the track. Where's the samples from? Where's everything? Because we want to know
Yeah.
first all about it. Is it a demo? Has it been signed? Where is it at? And I think this is, for me, for my label, perfect. And I'm looking to work with him and to sign that track. So I think that's going to happen. But there are some things that need to be done to the track to get that in the right place. For a start, it's very beat light, and if you see what I did to it, I added breaks to it, I added drums to it, and because the drums just are too light, and then you have to hear the back and forth. But anyway, here's what I put on my notes. Nice mix, great job, missing percussion, breaks, beat are a little light, distortion on basses to bring them out a bit more. I love it. Right, and then I got to work on the track, so obviously I can't show you that right now, but I will do so. But for me, a lot of times when you have a drum break, and then you do what I have on my buses and my sends is I have a parallel compression channel, and basically it's the same drums brought up underneath it, but fully maxed out, like compressed hard, so it gives it a bit of dirt. So you've got the same drum loop basically being parallel compressed underneath it to give it some grit, and then adding some breaks to it. You don't have to do that, but for me, adding some breaks to this would be great. And if you're going to add breaks, the best thing to do, you can either do it this way or reverse it. You can get a break, start with the break you like, and then copy the kick snare pattern in the break with an extra kick snare pattern, a layer, if you like, the real kick and the real snare, mimicking the pattern of the break. Or you could do it the other way around, where you've got your kick snare pattern and then you put a break in underneath, and then you cut out the kicks and snares so everything matches the kick and snare that you've got. Either way works, right? You can flip it or reverse it, right? So now that's a good way to do it. But it needs breaks. It needs more elements. It's a bit light, and the bass sounded a little naked. Wave Shaper's a great tool. What's the other one that I use all the time? Cheese sauce rice. I hate when this happens. It's because I'm elderly.
Oh God.
Okay.
What, as a plugin? Is that what you're trying to get at? Like what sort of
I
plugin or
can't
synth?
remember. It's a plugin I use all the time. Solar uses it, and it brings out an 808s. Let's see. I'll pull it up on my computer.
You know, like Trash or anything like that, Trash 2 or anything
I'll
like
pull it up in a second. Hold on. I'll go to my Ableton. And pull
Yeah,
it up
yeah.
if it's
Or
right,
what
yeah.
wave, some sort. I know it'd be some Wave Shape or something, but
Anyway, so Wave Shaper is really good. But this other particular plugin, you just need something, a little bit of grit on that, a little bit of distortion I felt on the basses, because they felt a little bit just like naked. Do you know what I mean? So whether you're making them on serum or whatever, it needed a little bit of, I'd say, multi-band or something. For me, I use this other thing. I'm going to find it. Talk about what you're doing, and then I'm going to look for this thing so I can let them know.
yeah, I'm sure. Big ups, Mark E.G. Welcome in, bro. And Spencer Tilley as well. It's good to hear from you today. So, going to this tune, for me, as Rap was saying, we need like more drums, like a break or some sort of Motown loop, you know, the old jungle breaks or something, just to help it move along. Because when we play the tune,
Dusty drops, no sound, dusty drops, no sound, dusty drops.
so that as of that point in the tune, you could come in with now like an old break, you know, just to make it a bit more faster. So the transitions change from the drop. Okay, now we've gone into the next gear of the tune. But for me, it's the bass. It just needs, as Rap was saying, if it had more excitement to it, more harmonic tone to the bass, it would cut through nicer on laptop speakers, phones, you know, smaller speakers.
Do you know who's great to listen to for stuff like this? Blade Runner, and he's got an amazing sample pack, and it's got all those breaks and everything in it.
Sure.
And you know, so you might want to pay attention to that, because that's he's king of all that sort of break stuff. Basically, you've got doom cat, another break, and then the break underneath. So you want to switch it up a bit, but like Dapz was saying, that jungly sort of vibe.
You just need a nice jungly break in there, just some break which is speeded up, and it's in time with the tune, and it just feels like it's giving it more, you know, speed. So yeah, for me, the track is brilliant. It's got a nice vibe to it. The vocals are nice. It's just one or two things in the mix that need adjusting. The bass needs a lot of compression. It's peaking too much. Going back to Span here, look, you can see it's gone right out the box. So that's some of those. Press the R. So it's that frequency there. You could use a multiband. Just try and hold that in so that it doesn't, the peaks are not going too high. It's too resonant. So by pushing it down, adding the excitement, you will add more harmonic content and it will just sound fuller.
By the way, the plugin is the Rift plugin that I use.
It's
got amazing. The old memory's still there. No, but it's got amazing, especially if you're using 808 and subs. It's got some really nice, like, obviously presets it can go through, but then just shape it the way you want, and it's pretty cool. It'll bring out those frequencies. But if you're making them on Serum and you go to the writing patch on Serum, you know, where the little pencil is, you can just draw in your own little notes and bring out those harmonics pretty simply. So you get a different version every time. It's nice.
Yeah, I mean, also with this tune, it needs a lot of high end. So I'm just going to get some analog EQ, well, analog based EQ, just to sort of help give it some presence. So that's without. Yeah, this plugin, it dips in and out because it's based on like snapshots of an actual hardware EQ. But you notice the difference when I put in this high shelf. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've boosted it 8 dBs at 12k just to help give it some high-end presence, a bit of shine, you know, a bit of gloss, makes things sound expensive. But it's a mix thing. You know, if you was in the mix and you had the extra breaks, it would all start balancing out. But no, other than that, it's a really, really good tune, mate. So well done.
Yeah, thing is though, you know, you can all fix those things. Those are all fixable, easy problems to fix. The main thing that I'm concerned with when I get a demo is does that demo grab me? And the moment I heard it, I was like, Scooby-Doo. I was like, whoop. Okay, I like that. That will work on radio, and I can play it out, and I just like it. And it needs some love, but you know, we can fix that. We have the technology.
We have the technology. No, you're absolutely right. If you hear a vibe in a tune and it catches you and you're like, yeah, this has got something about it, you know, the mixes are relevant. It can be a bag of waste, but it's fixable. You know, that tune it's got all the elements there. It just needs a good mix, a good solid mix. So
yeah,
moving on.
Speaking to Dapz about this earlier, we were talking about, because I think we really both enjoy like going through tunes, giving feedback, helping. Hopefully that's something we're doing. And we're just overwhelmed with how many tracks. So if we didn't get them all, we will get back to them next week with whatever we've missed. So we'll do our best to get to them. And there's a message pinned on the top here for everyone who's just joined, and it tells you how you can send your tunes. You just basically got to go to Open the Door, sign up. It's free. I won't spam you. And all the information you need, it will be in there when I send you newsletters before next Tuesday.
Yep. Excellent. Right.
So Gary Sharp, Mr. Blunt is the next one, I think.
That's correct. Right. Gary Sharp.
Right, that his name's Gary Sharp, but it's Mr. Blunt.
You know what I mean? You ready?
Oh, I love that track. It's so original.
Dreamy.
I love things like that. I mean, I'm a huge fan of strings and melodies, and I just love that. So,
Mm.
okay, so what have I written down? These are my quick notes. Sorry, because obviously I fixed everything in Ableton.
I was so
Well,
looking forward to actually hearing these edits and stuff you actually did to the tunes as well.
that's not all about me, is it? So, okay, here we go. So, Gary, yeah, well, I've noticed a lot of these waveforms that I'm getting. I don't know if you're seeing it, Daps. There's a lot of space in the intro.
Yeah, a hell of a lot.
Yeah, make sure you trim those down, people, because that's important. Okay, so I've put mainly the mix for me, cutting out bass, mud, needs EQ shaping, bring out the pads, effects, use effects. And here's where, for me, the effects thing, the most work I did on this track was in the breakdown with the use of an ambi kick, one of those,
Mm.
and a gap in the drop before to create more impact in the drop. I also changed the kick and snare. I made them a little more snappier, so it was a little bit more skippy. And I put again a break underneath it, just to keep it rolling more, because I thought it should be more of a skippy rolling track a bit more. But again, that's a stylistic choice. But I feel that these heavier snares and heavy kicks are better for jump up, rather than liquid, this is a liquid track. I mean, again, a stylistic choice. A beautiful vocal in that drop down would have been amazing, but doesn't need it. That's your choice, of course. Gap before drop to create more impact on the drop. Need to take that bass synth out to create variation. Use percussion to keep it interesting. Yeah, I mean, I just put very, very short notes, because
Yeah.
I thought I was going to show you everything. But
Yeah, it's a
basically,
shame, really.
that's all right. But that's basically it for me. I love the track. I think the track's awesome, but it needs some percussion. It needs to be rolling. I would try a snappier kick and snare and more of a skippier, and the percussion will make it skippier and vibe more. Like, it needs a perception of having more energy in it. But for me, if you see the difference between when I added some glitter to it, which was an ambi kick, a long reverse with a nice tail of reverb, so when it landed, it went, if you just play that breakdown, just before it gets into the breakdown, like 3 seconds
What,
before the
here?
breakdown, just before, no, before it goes into the breakdown.
Oh, okay, so yeah, here.
Yeah, that's perfect. Now you can kind of hear it. He had
Yeah.
some kind of effect in there, right? But nearly not enough. You need that shh.
Yeah.
And it really needs to go in there. And I love Splice for this, or Loop Cloud. I mean, my God, Loop Cloud's amazing because you could just play along whilst you're doing the track and it'll be in tempo, and it's so easy. With Splice, it's great as well. Same thing, except it doesn't play in tempo. But you just put the key of your track in, and everything, the effects, it'll all be in key. So that was my take on that. But I really love the track. It's beautiful, beautiful.
Absolutely.
And again, it doesn't matter. These are things that can be fixed. These are all things that can be fixed. And by the way, I sent 4 tracks off for feedback this week to my label manager, and he gives me brutal but honest feedback. Don't think I don't ask for feedback. I've learnt the hard way that I've got to do that, because when you're working on your own, you're sort of on your own, right? There's no one,
Yeah.
what do you think? And back in the day, we always collaborated with people. It was super nice. And now when I'm writing tunes, I think that they're done. And then I wonder, maybe after a few months, I listen to them and I go, I could have done something better with that. And I think having time away from your track and going back to it, back and forth, and having someone you trust who really knows what they're doing, not just your mate John from the pub. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like having someone who can give you honest feedback is really valuable. And I send my tracks off for feedback. So there's no shame in it. Over to you, Dapz.
Yeah, I mean, you've said a lot really about this tune. The only thing I can sort of talk about is the mix, or the way it's going to translate. I like the tune. I just feel that it's very kick heavy, as you've already mentioned. So it's very kick heavy. I feel that the amens are too low in pitch. If you had the amens in a higher pitch, that's where the energy would be. So for example, this is just an example. If you had the amens up there, then had a clap and a kick, it would be far more like the amens are out the way of the bass and the pads.
Well,
and you got a clap.
how many semitones did you put it
2.
up?
That was just 2.
Okay. And did you warp it when I mean, if he's doing this, I've been told that when you're changing the sound of snares and that, never to have them in warp mode. So you've got to pitch
Yeah.
them up without warp, right? Just so you know that, guys, if you're
Yeah. it'll be do it in a sampler way. So when you speed it up or make the pitch higher, the actual element is getting faster. So don't do it so it stays the same length and it's getting higher in pitch, because as you just said, you start getting aliasing and all sorts of weird artifacts. Yeah. So as I say, we'll just play it again quickly. You know, the aimers would be not. Sorry,
I was just gonna say, see how that sounds more liquidy already, like just.
Yeah. It's just the fact that with it being back down here, it's nice, it's aiming driven, but it's that kick which just feels a bit too like fatiguing after a while, because it's just knock. So if the kick was a bit thinner or it was further up in the scale, it would leave all the space for the pads and the bass and everything to sit nicely. Again, this is just a personal preference. But the other thing is, there was something else. Yeah, there's not a lot going on in the sides. There's not a lot of stereo information. So that's the tracking sides. Mono. So the majority of the track is mono. So it'd be nice if some hi-hats were in the stereo information, the stereo width. It'd be nice if the pads were there as well, to sort of hug the tune and be around the tune to give it the ear candy. Other than that, as I say, it's a really nice and tidy tune. It's dreamy, it's progressive, it keeps going on. I just think to create that energy, it's about getting the aim and pitched up and getting a kick which is less knocky and fuddy, just something so that the pads and the synths are doing the work. The drums are too much of a distraction. The kick's too much of a distraction for me.
Cool.
So that's that in a nutshell.
Well, we hope that helps. We're going to do Dapz next, which is a track called Way Out West. And Dapz was actually one of the winners on my Saviour remix competition. So I put one of his records out. So, yeah, it was good to see you submit something, mate. Awesome.
Yeah. So, Dapz, here we go.
Cool.
Nice.
Nice, selector. It kind of reminds me of when I was not, when I was starting out, and I would put lots of tunes together, and I'd put 300 breaks into the track. And then some poor engineer would have to sort it all out. It needs to me the first off, track's amazing. Love the track. It's continuously interesting. For me, this is mixed stuff. On this track for me, because I think it's got a great choice of sounds, nice drop, generally a balanced mix. Maybe there's some more side chaining that could be done there with the pads rather than on top. Great work. I've put here hand over to Dapz, because for me this is all about the mixes. It's a bit muddy, needs EQing, especially for me. The drums are the problem. I like the pattern of the drums. I like that, but it sounds like you've got one drum on top of another instead of it sounding like one definitive break. Now, the reason I spent 4 hours on drums today is because you don't want it to sound like you've got a kick and snare on top of a break, on top of another break. It all needs to sound like it's part of the same drum. And that's why I was saying, if you listen to Blade Runner, Voltage, Serum, all these guys, their breaks sound like, it's like, well, where'd they get that break from? But they made it, they cut it up, they tuned every part of it to fit. Each part of the break was EQ'd. So for example, if you've got a break, you get the break on your door, split it into channels: the kick part of the break, the whatever, the hat part of the break, the ruffles that are happening in between the break, and each one of those channels for me I EQ and treat until the whole thing sounds like one cohesive break. For me, that was the only problem with this, was that the drums just sounded like you stuck 3 loops on top of each other. But the pattern's right, the idea is completely right, but for me the drums just sounded like they need a lot of work and a lot of polish to make it sound modern. Because it's okay having a jungle track, but in order for that to stand up these days, we've really got to make sure that those breaks sound good, even though we're keeping that jungle vibe. Do you know what I mean? So for me, that was all it was on this track, really.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, the vibe, the idea, the theme of the tune is all there. Everything is there. I just feel like you've gone down a route where you feel you had to enhance things for no reason. So it's true. Like, let's go to this point, for example. The top end, the low end, everything is great because it's a lovely balance. So you're coming from this part, and it's sounding great. And then when it comes to the drop, although I like the drop, it feels like the energy goes because all the top end goes, and that's because one of the breaks has come out. So listen to the drop. And then go back here.
All the tops are missing.
See, there's a big difference in top end. Not that that's an issue, but what's happening is the break that you've got going on here, which is obviously the Amen. There's no hi-hat or tick hat or something to help fill the top spectrum. You could have just a hi-hat just to fill that spectrum up until you come back with that's the thing. It's like you want to have that tonal balance throughout, so that no matter if it's an empty part of the tune, the high end is still consistent, it's still there. Otherwise you get to those points in the tune and it feels like it's come away from you. Feel like something's changed too much. I like the tune. I don't think you need that snare layer, and if you wanted the snare layer, shorten it so that it's not so long. As Rat was saying, go listen to some Blade Runner tunes, like some of the newer stuff he's doing. He's really thinned out the drums to the point where it's just a break, a hi-hat, and the bass is doing a lot of the work. But in a nutshell, you could have just used the Amen here, thinned it, put some top end, use those other breaks that you're using from the intro, and let it just roll, rather than thinking I've got to layer the snare because the snare's not powerful enough. just try and bring the snare out in the Amen. If the Amen's not good enough, to replace it with another Amen, because you know an Amen's an Amen, but there's so many manipulated out there.
I wish I could show you my snare bus channel, but basically, one of the things is when I'm writing a kick and a snare. So on the snare channel, on the snare bus rather, because I might have 2 or 3 layers, I'll have the Pro 3 like compressor, then I'll have the SPL transient shaper on there, and then I'll have a limiter on there. And I should show you the settings that obviously each snare is different, but I group them together and then I A/B them off and on, and it's incredible the difference. So a lot of times your snares won't sound great until you've done a little processing to them. Same with the kick. Do you know what I mean? It's like you do need to do processing. Just because you get a snare doesn't mean it's done. And often because it doesn't sound right. We're like, why doesn't it sound right? We had another snare on top and another layer and another layer. Whereas really it can just be down to the processing you use. Make sure it's in key, you know, and make sure that like you're using like the SPL transient shaper is amazing. And the compressor, the Pro 3, I'm horrible with names on the Fab Filter package. That is great as well. Just a little compression, get the snappiness in the snare with the transients, and then like basically the limiter as well. And you can, it just, if you A/B it, it will sound incredible. The other thing I was going to say is good luck with that sample. That's a well-known track. So you probably have to have someone re-sing that, because otherwise you probably won't get in trouble if you sell under 1,000 copies. And sometimes it's better to ask forgiveness than to seek it, if that makes sense. I think there's an expression there somewhere, but just so you know that when it's a recognizable tune, you should probably have someone re-sing that, and then you can release it.
Be a bit more friendly. But like Rat was saying, ideally you want to get all your drums, split them, so kick, snare, hi-hat, flicks, whatever, into multiple channels. Send that to a bus or group, and if you've got any other loops, do the same, so they're into a group. Send them groups or buses, however you want to call it, into another group, and on that's where you want to start adding your transient shapers. After the transient shaper, you want to use a clipper to clip the peaks so that you're not overshooting. It's not too peaky, like what Will was pointing out earlier with things being too resonant. And what you'll find is that the drums will become a lot sharper, but yet not overpowering. And that's the beauty of using transient shapers and clippers. So, for example, I've just put this is a mastering transient shaper, so you can use this on full tunes. Though I would use it very sparingly, I will exaggerate so you can hear the difference. So I will bypass in and out. So this is bypass, and I'll engage it. To see how sharper the snare became, it came a lot more forwards. The kick was a bit more sharper as well. It didn't really do anything with the bass. Again, I exaggerated these settings just so you could hear the difference, but you imagine if you had this on the buses or the individual elements, you could, this is how the pros are actually getting those snares to punch, the kicks to punch, and everything to cut through in the mix so sharp without, clouding anything else.
Don't you call me an old pro. Right, let's move on to, here we go, we've got Lonosphere out. This is cool because I think it's a house track, which made me very, very happy, because in America, that's what I played, tech house, as well as drum and bass jungle. So yeah, it was great to get a house track. So let's listen to this.
Yep, let's go.
that's awesome. I really enjoyed that. Something different, which is cool. My notes initially was that sound was great when it came in once, but it was too repetitive. For me, less is more with things like that. And it was obviously very loud in the mix. And also it got quite busy, but that's kind of cool. I mean, he made it work, I think, and it looked really
Yeah.
good. It was a clean mix. And quite a clean mix actually, which is good. Interesting and good choice sounds. Kick needs to come up more, and the kick for me was what let it down. If you use something like kick boom or bassism or whatever you use for kick, that kick needed to be, because house
More
music is
weighty.
all about the kick. Drum and bass is all about the snare. It's like a wet fish hitting you in the face. But house music, house music's all about that kick. So that needs to come out, and that could have glued it a bit more. But again, just a mixing and getting it right. But for me, he was missing effects. I put riser effects needed, hats, percussion missing, shaker, things like that. Instead of putting too many melodic elements in it, sometimes just having that one riff that works over and because he had a riff that just hooked you in straight away, and it was great. And I could never get bored of that riff. So when you've got a riff that works, instead of adding more riffs to the riff, this melody's already strong. Just instead adding shakers, hi-hats, percussive elements will carry the same. Look at French Kiss, perfect example of a track that the same riff going around and around and around, nothing changed but the percussion. It's like a little train, right? The melodic train comes along, picks up the hat passengers, goes to the next station, picks up the shaker and continues, but the riff never changed, the train didn't change. So for me, it's a stupid analogy, but it helped me when I was learning. For me, that is what it was needed in this. What about you, Dapz?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the track was really nice. It kept you engaged. It kept you listening. It would have been nice if it had like some sort of hook to allow you to remember the tune, because this is great here. I like all that, and then when it comes into this second section of the tune. I feel that that's when the energy comes in. And does it come in too late? I'm not too sure. I mean, it's pretty much halfway through the tune.
I think that's a stylistic choice, though. And,
yeah, exactly.
I think for me, I loved it as it was, and you like it a different. Yeah. But those are stylistic choices, and we got to leave those down to maybe them. But for house music, a lot of it is doesn't have these. Do you know what I mean? It's a different genre. It's like that. So I like that bit with the vocals. Well, I see what you mean. You could have totally made a feature out of that, but I mean, that's a stylistic choice, I think. What 100%. About the kick? What do you think?
When you're listening to this part of the tune, you can see that the kick is the main energy of the low end here. You come to this section, and then all of a sudden the kick feels bigger because you've got the bass line going with it. So maybe like in this section here, maybe have the same kick, but allow more weight to come through. So it's filling out that more 40 hertz or 30 hertz. You mentioned the same thing. It just felt a bit light on the low end of the kick. But again, it might have been a mixing choice, so that when the DJs are mixing the tune, it's a bit lighter. It's not so overpowering. And when it does drop, the impact's there. So it can lean both ways, but the mix in general, the balance, the top end, the mid range, the lows, absolutely fine. You know what I mean? This is a great tune.
Yeah, and a really good mix, I thought. Really good mix. Yeah. Cool. All right, we've got our last track, which is Wayne Atherley. What time you have the wow, that's okay. Okay, you're going to take on a classic, are you? Okay.
Taking it back. Boom.
Boom. Brave.
Bit of jump up for you.
Okay, so some really good elements in there. But I mean, you're starting off with a hit song, so that's half the work there done for you. When you, it is because everybody knows the
It's a
song.
big sample.
They're gonna love it, aren't they? They love it. You can't go wrong. But here's the thing: is when you are remixing a classic, you really have to be on point if you're going to bring it up to this day and age. Again, Voltage, Serum, Blade Runner, if you listen to them and the way they make their drums, what I'm seeing with a lot of the demos that we've had is a concurrent theme of definitely people not listening to other people's tracks. Listening on the radio is different from putting it in your DAW and studying the track intrinsically. That's not the same thing like listening to a track when you mash up and then going to the dance. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about putting it in your DAW, listening to it, studying it forensically, getting in there and taking it apart and seeing what's going on. All these tracks, not all of them, but a lot of the tracks, we've said the same thing: lacks percussion, lacks movement. I think actually it was the Teardrop track was the only one where he was doing all the percussion and adding hats in the right places. But this is the problem with these tracks. They just get boring after like a few minutes because there's nothing to keep driving it. And the track might be really great, might have all these amazing elements in it, but people can only listen to it for so long. I never forget, Ronnie Size gave me some really good information when I think first time I met him, we started talking about tracks, and he was saying, you know what I do, Rap? He goes, and we were in a proper nerdy discussion about this. He was going, I put on a track, I let it run for 8 bars. And then if I like that 8 bars, I just let it loop and I go around the house, I'll brush my teeth or do whatever. And if I'm not sick of it after half an hour, I know that I've got something with legs. And I always thought that was good advice because, if you get bored of the same thing after that's why a lot of jump up these days. And I mean this respect because I love jump up and I play it and I love it. But that's why everyone's double dropping, because all the action happens, the build, then the drop, and then after the drop, it's like, meh. It's like, okay, it's time to mix something else in and do another double drop, because no one's making, and a lot of the tunes here have been really interesting, which have been heartwarming and individual, and that's great. But if you're doing this jump up style, you've got to keep it moving. So for me, I've written here, when remixing a classic, you have to be really on point with the drums. Intros a little bit sparse, drums, percussion, lacking in drums, percussion, variation, and breaks. This will help you create the energy that is missing. Love the bass. Really spend some time A/Bing mixes to hear if yours is light in comparison. Personally, I would have chosen different drums for this with some weight. This needs this needs bigger snares, because jump up is typically more of a harsher snare and a heavier, if you listen to Profile or any of these guys that are doing great jump up, all of them, Magistrate, all the guys that are just amazing, right? Listen to their snares and kicks. Again, it's all about listening to your peers. One of the best pieces of advice I can leave you guys with is, when I first started making music, I pulled, because in them days we played records and vinyl, I pulled out like 10 records that I really liked, and I just sat down in my squat and I just had one record player Syntronic turntable and I just listened to them over and over and over, and I was just like, what is making these records? What's the common theme between these records that's making them good? Take away the track, because the track's obviously good and that's their talent and that's a stylistic choice. But what are the things that they're all doing? And if you start looking at tracks forensically like that, you'll go, oh wow, they double the hats up every 8 bars. They put a break in underneath here, and then it goes to a different, it'll be kick snare, kick snare, kick snare, aim and kick snare, and you'll start noticing that these things are something that all producers are sort of, there's a theme. And I'm not saying you should copy everybody, but I'm just saying there's some stuff that just works, right? So you want to keep it driving. So that's my opinion on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether it's a stylistic choice or not, but like you say, The drums empty, was you going for that sort of approach of it being like a stepper sort of tune, you know, light, letting the bass do the work? I think it would work if you were to do this as a bootleg. I don't think you'd be able to get it signed because of the sample. You might get in trouble.
However,
However,
they could send that to the person who made
yeah,
the track if it was up to. I wouldn't send it as it is because it needs some work. But
mm,
how you deal with this is you find out whoever wrote the track, in this case, you know who, right? And
yeah,
you find a way to contact them and you do a private SoundCloud link so they know
yeah,
no one else has heard it. A bit
yeah,
tough.
yeah. Until they tune in.
So they watch
Um,
this stream. But then you say, so in future, if you guys are wondering if you want to do a cover of someone's track or a remix of someone's track, the respectful and right way to
yeah,
do it is to send a private SoundCloud link and say, look, you're one of my favorite artists, because flattery will get you everywhere. And, I've just done this mix. Please consider me for future remix work with no
yeah,
expectation. Here's my email, not your love story or your life story, just that. And, if the tune's great, that person might come back. I mean, it happened this week, you email right back and go, I love that track. What's the deal?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, early 2010s, I did a remix of a tune. It was for an actual competition, and I had all the parts for the stems, which was earlier in 2000. But I decided to do something fresh when I was part of this duo, and we submitted the tune to the label who did it originally, and they loved it and put it out on vinyl as an actual official remix of the tune.
There you go.
So tonal aspects of the tune, I feel like you've probably mixed this tune, or you've been playing this tune very loud through your monitors or headphones. The reason why I say that is because if you look at the line here, which is on the analyzer, there's not much bass in comparison to the top end. So we could look at this as a seesaw. Do we take the tops down, or do we bring the low end up? Personally, what I would probably do is look at putting some sort of tilt on there, like a tilt shape. So if I go in here and then just select a tilt, if it lets me select a tilt, it keeps jumping off. Okay, let's go this way then. I'd come down and I'd come up, basically that sort of thing. Press play. And then I'll bypass. Remember, they're not going to be level. So when I do bypass, you're going to think, well, it sounds dull, but it's because it's going lower in volume. So if I was to do it as equal volume, you would notice the difference. I can do that quickly. But I think you get the point there anyway. I mean, it's a good tune. It just needs work on the mix. Those hi-hats need to come down, the bass needs to come up, and other than that, it is what it is. You can either put more drums in there, or you could leave it quite empty for it's more of a stepper approach. But definitely consider looking into the mix, the tonal aspect of the tune, just by doing this EQ curve here. We'll have a look on the analyzer. And I'll bypass. Those are just really, really loud and piercing. So
yeah, I think as well you can really make use of the sample, what you've done, and I like that you've kept it the same. But it'd be really cool if you'd done something like what the time the dread, and do some vocal edits and stutters, and you can, you don't have to add drums. Sometimes people are using, and I do this in a lot of my tracks. I'll add a vocal instead of a drum fill, so it'll be like drop the B, like something like that. Just little vocal stutters, like use Effectrix or something like that. That can be cool.
Yeah.
If you don't want to program them from scratch. But again, I learned that trick by studying other people's tracks and seeing what they've got in the tracks. Why are they sounding the way they sound? So I think the overall quality of the tracks was amazing, but I think what we need to do is really, I think the overall message of today is spend time listening to other people's track, forensically inspecting them and taking them apart like a surgeon until you
Yeah.
understand what is happening in everything. And the way to do that is to set up your track in your DAW and go through locator by every 8 bars. Just listen to the track and break it down. Try to ignore the track and look at the elements. And
Yeah.
then compare 5 or 6 tracks in your DAW doing that. Have one of your studio days just be a study day. You know, people forget making music isn't about just smoking a blunt and getting, you know, trashed. It's not about that. It's about study. It's a lot of work doing this. You've got to learn
Well,
math. You've got to learn the plugins. You've got to learn how frequency works. I mean, it's study. This is for us. This is our job. This is what we do. This is how we make a living
yeah.
off this, right? So, you know, it's a lot of work to
It
learn
is.
how to use this stuff. And if you're really interested in this as more than a hobby, then and even if it is just a hobby, do it right, put the time in to study it, because that means studying other people's tracks, watching tutorials, getting into it, getting feedback from other people. But the cheapest and easiest way for you to know how your track is doing is to compare it to other people's tracks. Do you know what I mean? And get honest feedback from people who are fellow producers or whatever, because other producers are willing to help each other, you know. Nice
Of
ones
course.
anyway. And with
Yeah.
that, I think we'll leave it there probably, Daps. Thank you
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
you.
100%.
Thank you so much for your feedback, and thank God you were prepared with your stuff, because my stuff just didn't work. So
Well,
thank you.
it's that's the the nature of the beast with these computers and technology.
I shall be having words with Restream and asking them to help me
Ah,
this week. I'll be like, help me, and they will. They're great. All
yeah.
right, everybody, thank you so much. Let's give some shout outs. I mean, everybody that was here, just thank you so much for joining
Yeah.
us. Big shout out to everybody who sent their tracks and were brave enough to let
Yep.
us do that and help everybody watching. We really appreciate it. And to everybody here as well,
Yep.
who I blocked a couple of people because they weren't very nice. And if you say something I don't like, you're getting blocked, because everybody here is being brave, putting tunes out, you know.
Yep.
So if someone thinks they can do better, that's great. But there's no need to you know, put people down. We're all at different parts of our journey. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in no way was we trying to be not nice about the feedback. We were just being honest, and that's what you need. You can't just send your track to a friend or to somebody who's just going to turn around and say, "Yeah, it sounds sick." You need somebody who's like going to give you a non-biased feedback and really tell you, "Well, I think X, Y, and Z." Do you know what I mean? Instead of just getting the usual, "Yeah, it sounds sick," and you go off with false hope. You see,
yeah. False hope. And
it is.
you know, we've got one more session left next Tuesday. And yes, if you want to send us your track, I will be going through what I've done, hopefully, and revisiting that. And then Daps can work on mixes and mastering of that track. Just sign up. The pin message at the top here, it's got the open the door link. Just go in there, sign up for free, and I will send you instructions of how you can send me a track. You have to be signed up to do that. And we will see you next week, hopefully without the technical gremlins. We'll see you next week, where we will open that door. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We really appreciate your time and bravery. See you later.
Thank you.